All right, so now we are on Facebook and YouTube Live. Um, Dear Venerable members of the Mahasangha, dear friends in Dhamma, whoever is joining us on YouTube and Facebook, um, first of all, I would like to wish you all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. I hope all of you are well, happy, healthy, strong. I hope nothing is bothering you, disturbing you. And it is such a wonderful moment for all of us to see the gathering of the venerable monks and nuns from different cities, different countries. So I would like to welcome all of you to this bi-weekly sutra discussion. And so uh, I'm going by my screen, whoever is there. So I see Bante Vijita from Ottawa and Bante Uparatana from Washington, D.C., Bante Yuttadammo from Stony Creek, Niagara Falls, Venerable Vimala Bhikkhuni from Chicago, Venerable Sobhana Teri from California, Bante Vangsananda from Seattle, and Mataji Reverend Kema joining us from Mumbai, India, and Bante Nanda from London, and Bante Sunita from Ottawa, Bante Sankit from Detroit, Michigan, USA, Bante Jinananda from Ottawa, Canada, Bante Kusala is from here, Toronto, but he's in the wood right now, and Bante Muniputo from Seattle, Bante Dhammaloka is joining us from Sri Lanka. It's early morning for you, and Bante Kamalasiri just joined us from Minnesota, and uh, and then there was someone else. Did I say everyone's name? We had another venerable, but he just disappeared. I think he will join us later. So I would like to welcome all of you to this bi-weekly sutra discussion. I know this is also a long weekend for America, for Canada, and venerable monks and nuns are very busy with their own temple activities. But despite that, I'm happy to see all of you here. And so past a few weeks, we have been discussing the Mangala Sutta, all the 38 types of blessings for physical, spiritual, moral well-being. So today we have a new topic. That topic is the Buddhism and mental health and introduction. Mental health is a very interesting subject, as you all know, and we monks and nuns are seeing people almost every day. People are coming to us for some help. So today we don't have any structure, any format. Our format is just to have a friendly uh, conversation, dialogue, and anyone can. I know previously you have signed up for a particular blessing, and then I have invited you to talk about that blessing. But this time is just the mental health, and we would like to contribute. Actually, whatever we know, and if one venerable says something or make some contribution about this good subject, and other venerables can raise hands, and you also can add your own insights. I think this friendly discussion is going to be very productive, very meaningful for our audience, and also this is for our own understanding. I think we know what we are talking about. I believe we can learn so much from all of you. So this mental health subject, I took a look at the definition given by the World Health Organization, and there in the last sentence is very last two sentences are very important. It says, unfortunately, in most parts of the world, mental health and mental disorders are not accorded anywhere the same importance as physical health. Rather, they have been largely ignored or neglected. Um, I think that's why today we have chosen this topic to discuss. So I would like to understand like what does it mean? What's the definition for mental health? I think the global body today is the World Health Organization, and how do they define this mental health? So I had a discussion with Bhante Kusala about this, and I think Bhante Kusala, you have something to talk about that.
Thank you, Bhante. So yes, we did discuss about it. I went to World Health Organization and I went on. Are you still able to see me?
No.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
According to World Health Organization, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which one is able to function in a beneficial way, both individually and also socially, like contributing in a fruitful way to the community, while still having some perhaps mental and physical issues. Some people may have some disorders, but they are still able to live normally and contribute. So that's about well-being. So someone who doesn't have that kind of well-being, they may be experiencing different disorders and they may not have that same ability as a uh, healthy person to contribute to the community in a fruitful way. So I guess that draws kind of attention to something very important, Bante,
Yeah.
that even when someone is mentally not well, that they are still able to contribute. So it's not the total disappearance of any disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It is just that you may have some difficulties, both mentally and physically, but
Yeah.
you still can act and function in the society normally.
Yeah.
Therefore, that person has some level of mental health. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we can go from there.
Okay. Uh, so is well, I know this is a broad topic. Now, any venerable monk or nun, would you like to talk about that? Let's say we are asking the question, what is mental health? Now, Bante Kusala just explained what mental health is all about, a definition given by the World Health Organization. Now, would you like to talk about this, anyone? Okay, I see Mataji, Reverend Kema, you were smiling. Okay, you have to unmute yourself. Okay.
First, I drop in the hat. I prepared something just to feed you some things and then take off with it. You know, that's what I thought was the best way for the group to take a look at this. I worked in mental health for about 4.5 years as a citizen advocate. A citizen advocate works as a person who helps anyone who, in our case, was specializing in depressive disorders. And if they have any kind of depression, and there's so many different kinds of depression, and depression is one of the biggest things in the United States and across the globe right now with COVID, because people have been through lockdown, and this is something entirely new. The whole world looking for something to have completely in common. It was the suffering of going into lockdown, being pulled away from social intercourse with other people. For the elderly, it has been devastating. For the young, it has been absolutely devastating. For the suicide rates for all ages across the demographics on the globe, it has been devastating. debilitating. So this is part of what has happened. But what I'd like to do is just, when we had some feedback, was thinking about that depression is not the only thing, but depression is one of the major things that stems from all of these, what I'm going to mention to you. There's just some examples of mental health conditions that cause suffering and serious disabilities when not identified, supported, and treated on a continuing basis for a time to rebalance. Because when a person has this part of the body from here to here, the difficulty Venerable has mentioned is that throughout the world, even in developed countries, the last taboo for the human race is to say, I'm sick up here, I have sickness. Because with the rest of the body, you can say you are sick with any part of your body and you can get along fine with people. But when you have some disturbance, which is here in the mind, then what happens? You disturb other people. And the devastating thing for people who are treated with mental health is that we don't treat this just the person who, the consumer, they call it the consumer. We have to go by the influence of the first circle and second circle around this patient, because they are disturbing the family, they are disturbing people outside, and that dictates a lot of times pressure on the person who is ill because they don't have control. You see, that's one of the things that happens. So the debilitation of mental health, undetected and untreated, where the folding effects, this is what I want you guys to get, want you venerables to get in touch with this. The serious disabilities, when not identified, they tend to fold over, and the continuing basis for the rebalancing folds into other types of things. So listen carefully. Examples of debilitating mental health, undetected and untreated, these folding effects cause other diagnoses to compound on top of you. It's not like a broken leg or a heart condition or stomach disorder. It's not like some other organ in your body or even cancer. It's even more devastating. An example is one can take a job in a high tension scenario in this life, where that can lead into a stress disorder diagnosis all of a sudden, and then leading onward into a depressive disorder. But the depressive disorder is not the end of the story, because that can lead them into panic attacks. How am I going to exist with other people? Paranoia, fears, and withdrawal from family and friends. Eventually, it can evolve into the seriousness of what's called agoraphobia, where one person is afraid to even come out of their house or communicate with people anymore. This is devastating. But now you're looking at a global population that is faced with the devastation of agoraphobia. The venerables have done an absolutely tremendous job worldwide, learning Zoom, getting out there. But we also need support groups to happen. We need people who are lay people to come and help us to stretch out support groups online for women and men and children and families and that kind of thing. Needs to happen. And we as Buddhists are well equipped for this. This is a huge part of Buddhism because we study the mind, and the mind is the control center for all the mental health, you see? So
Yes.
the other scenarios, mental health challenges comes out of all demographics in the population, such as acute depression, which happens after an accident, an economic change, anger management challenges, acute digital addictions, to texting, computers, and phone calls, and the fear that arises from not understanding what's happening, and the feeling of grudges and revenge against losing your jobs, and panic attacks and pain and fear of terminal illnesses and being isolated. And when fires and storms rage around us, sudden shocks and fears and hopelessness, this type of thing. The fears of the future are lamentations of the past, those denials of the value of letting go taking some time to just be is out of the question. To find yourself is out of the question. The pressure of the group to stay in touch and stay sane when you feel like withdrawing and are fearful and sometimes can't get your drugs. When you go beyond the developed nations, you face a worse situation where people are not able to get. Now, drugs are two-sided. This is what I want you to understand. There is a stabilization process in mental health. And before we can help someone, or any other professional can help somebody, and they can pull out of anything where they are in this situation, they have to be able to be stabilized. And that's where we can help them tremendously in Buddhism. This has been a ministry that I've been involved in ever since I touched being a nun, and helping people to not only live, but how to learn to die. And the Buddha has taught us how to live, but in the Nakalaputta Sutta and in let's see, Anathapindikavada Sutta, there is instructions on what to do in the case of believing you're going to die, terrible fears of what's going to happen to you if you die. We have all kinds of sources that I don't think some people know we have, because we don't just teach about living in this religion. They taught people how to die in this religion. And how to live with grace, and how to die with grace and dignity and calm. It was absolutely tremendous what is found in this religion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mataji Kema. Now, I think it's very interesting what you're saying. And now I would like to, get back to what Buddha said about this. There's in Anguttara Nikaya, there's a sutra. It's called the Roga Sutta. This is in the Chatukka Nipata, in the Indriya Vagga, the sutta number 157. And Buddha is actually talking about two types of illnesses. It's called the Kayikocha Rogo, Chetasikocha Rogo. Now we understand the Kayika Rogo, the physical illness. When we talk about the mental illness, or what is it? Bante Sankacha, you raised hands. Bante Sankacha, you have to unmute.
Yes, Bante, thank you for the opportunity. I think it has been a wonderful topic today, as we all want to focus on this. And when we talk about mental health, I think it's a very broad topic, right? It's not simple, it's very complicated. And the beauty of this topic is that it connects everything in our life. When it comes to our mental health in our practical day-to-day life, it connects with every aspect of our life. Even though we are focusing today on the mental health, when you think about the connection, we can never talk about mental health without talking the physical health, right? And also the other important areas of this is the emotional health. And at the same time, we have to be very healthy with our relationships. How we maintain healthy social interaction. All these things are connected. The beauty of that is, if we are mentally ill, if we are not mentally stable or healthy, any of these areas would not function effectively and properly, right? And also, the mental health is a combination of all these areas too. If any of these areas in our life is not functioning well, that can directly affect our mental health. This mutual interaction, it's a wonderful thing to understand. Therefore, when we think about the mental health, we cannot just focus on the mind, the mental health, but we have to focus about all other important areas. So I think, therefore, we need to narrow it down, when we talk about the mental health.
Mhm.
To touch upon all these important areas, how they are related to our mental health, right? So when we think about the relationship between the Dhamma, the Buddha's ultimate message, the ultimate peace, can be defined as the perfect, healthy state of mind,
Mhm.
reaching the nirvana, reaching the enlightenment. Even whenever we practice the Dhamma, what we experience in our mind, the peace of mind, the tranquility. So we can see all these practices, the teachings of the Buddha, ultimately lead us to be perfectly healthy in our mind,
Mm.
right? So as human beings, we have to understand that to have mental issues, mental illness, abnormalities, uh, stress and anxieties, all these things, as we talk about, these things are natural as human beings, right?
Mm.
So we have to accept that all these things are inevitable as we function in our everyday life, right?
Mhm.
So therefore, accepting that vulnerability for all these mental issues, we have to begin with how to maintain our self-care, which is a
Yeah.
very important topic in every aspect today.
Well, yeah, in this sutra, actually, Buddha is saying that, he's highlighting these two types of illnesses. And at the same time, he says someone can live physically healthy for one day, 1 week, 1 month, maybe the whole life. But he
Right,
says you can't find any single human being who who is not suffering from this mental illness, right?
right. That is
No.
exactly, it reminds me of the very popular saying of Venerable uh, uh, Moggallana, right? He
Yeah.
says that sabbe putujjana ummattaka, right? I mean, until we attain the enlightenment, we may have some sort of mental disorders, problems,
But
so
I think
it is the nature,
we have to get there later, but I would like to thank
right?
you, Bhante Sankija. And Bhante Vijita from Ottawa, I know you work with the hospital, and you have some expertise on this subject. What do you have to say about this mental health?
Thank you, Bhante Sarnapala, and thank you all the venerable monks. And it's very um, fruitful discussion. And as we heard from many different monks and nuns, the perspectives of mental health, I would like to go back to today's topic, which is Buddhism and mental health and introduction. So I think when I see the mental health from the Buddhist perspectives, um, we have to, I think, also understand that there are different levels of mental health. When we talk about abnormal behaviors and psychological disorders, that's another level where psychotherapists are working and psychologists and psychiatrists are working on. So that is kind of below the normal and the regular function of the mind, which has to address seriously and has to seek professional support. I think that there's misunderstanding that since Buddhism talk about mind and how to improve mind, sometimes people in the West think, or even in Buddhist countries think, when something is going wrong, we have to start meditating or following the teachings of the Buddha. And there are, of course, things that we can use to increase our mental health from the teaching of the Buddha. But when someone is below the normal and regular functioning level, and that person need more care and more attention to bring it that person's mind to a stable state. So I think we have to kind of address some of the a teaching shared by Bhante Punnaji. I think the late Bhante Punnaji. He has done lots of work on this subject, like the Buddhist psychotherapy and Western psychotherapy, and the contribution of Buddhist teachings to Western psychotherapy as well. So once he's saying that the Buddhism is trying to bring normal mind to a supernormal state, but the psychotherapy and mental health is trying to bring abnormal mind to a normal state. So that is I think I find it's very interesting distinguish between Buddhist teaching and the mental health.
That's really good. It's really nice.
I think we are having some
We're losing Toronto.
Can we hear Bhante?
It's internet problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Something. Yeah. Let's see.
He'll be back.
Yeah.
The internet there is,
I think until he comes back, so someone can continue. Someone can.
Bhante Sankecha can continue.
I see 2 hands are raised and
Right, Bhante Jinananda.
Yeah,
So please take the opportunity, Bhante.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. Yeah. Until Bhante Sannapala comes, I might say something. It's really interesting to have this topic, and the speakers before me contributed nicely to the discussion. So I just want to begin with the mindset of a layman about mental health and Buddhism, because those who listen to the conversation might need to get better and clear understanding. So I participate in this discussion as a ordinary person who doesn't know anything about mental health, especially from the Western psychology and so forth. When we look at the mental health and Buddhism, do the Western psychology recognizes Buddhism as a treatment to mental health? That is one question I would like to ask from, because a lot of people see Buddhism as a religion, like the other religion, and there's in a clinical level, has Buddhism evolved very rapidly to find solutions to mental health, and as Buddhist solutions are accepted by the therapeutic industry as mental treatment? These are some of the questions some people asked always. That's why Venerable Vijita is trying to define some terms in his talk, because we need to define these terms for people who understand mental health from the Western psychological point of view, and also from a Buddhist point of view. So I have a lot of such questions to be to ask. So I might take time to ask them over the discussion. But I just want to turn into some definition. Let's define what Buddhism is. It is very good to mention about Venerable Punnaji, late Venerable Punnaji by Bhante Vijita, because I find a very solid ground to understand what Buddhism is with his definition for Buddhism. He said that Buddhism is not a religion, because just so-called religion teaches a hierarchy of different individuals. On top, you have the Almighty God who created the world. So everybody in religious platform is based on the Almighty God, the Creator God. So there are some rituals. So that is particularly the definition we find for religion. But when we look at the Buddha's teaching, do we find such thing? Of course, with culture, we can find Buddhist rituals and so forth. But what the Buddha said is something about body and mind and how we go with the body and mind into a peaceful state. Therefore, Venerable Punnaji denied the fact that Buddhism is a religion. And then is Buddhism a philosophy? Because people in the West and in the East around the globe give so much emphasis on philosophy. But Venerable Punnaji was in a position to deny that as well, because in philosophy you have a view. You have a view about life, you have a view about the world. You stand on personal point of view in terms of defining something. But in Buddhism, what we see is to deny view in the first place and find peace and happiness. Because with view, we might believe the fact that I exist and there are so many things belong to I, even the good health. If I take good health, I am good health, I have good health. So that fact could create mental disorders for people when they get sicknesses. So in Western philosophy, we can see that people have very good understanding about life, but at the end, they stuck in a place of reflection where they get I, me, and myself. Therefore, I have an understanding that Venerable Punnaji is denying the definition for Buddhism as a philosophy. Then what he said, which is very important, he said that Buddhism is a psychotherapy which find clear, lucid mental health for human and also any beings out of the human realm. I'm very interested on this definition for Buddhism because Buddha talks about mind. Buddha talks about how to cultivate mind. Buddha talks about how to, cleanse mind from impure thoughts. That kind of mental health Buddha talks about. So Buddha's take about mental health is not just for a short period of time. It's a long-term practice, and it is all about keeping our mind on compassion, kindness, and so forth. There Buddha talks about mental illness as well. When he talks about mental health, he has to address what mental illness, and there you have a lot of wonderful things. So let me come to conclusion of my first contribution by saying that there's a wonderful two stanzas in the Buddhist literature, and it says that like this: Yekechi osadaloke vijjanti vividabahu. Buddha said that there are many treatment or medicine for different mental problem disorders as well as physical disorders. Simply, there are many illnesses, both physical and mental, in the world. And there are many treatment, medicine, and various other measures that has been taken to solve these mental and physical illnesses. Dhammosada samangnati etam bhivatabiko. Buddha defined the teaching as the so-called perfect medicine for all these physical and mental illnesses. That is really interesting. Dhammosada samangnati etam bhivatabiko. Buddha invite us to drink it. Buddha invite us to take it as the perfect medicine for all kinds of mental illnesses. Then he says, Dhammosada samangnati etang pivatabiko. Dhammosadang pivitwana ajaramaranasin. Once you drink this Dhamma medicine, you can, be deathless, which means you are in a pure, perfect health conditions, good health condition. Bhava itva cha pasitva nibbuta upadike. The ultimate, results of the Buddha's teaching is nirvana, and it is the good health that the Buddha talks about. Therefore, I think the definition for Buddhism, according to all kind of condition, is a mental therapy. Buddhism is a mental therapy. It is a psychology that teaches us to cleanse our mind from unwholesomeness and maintain our mind on wholesomeness. There are a lot of things I have to ask from very erudite, widespread knowledge monk about mental health. So this is what I can tell at the very beginning of my contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable. Yeah. Vimala, Bhikkhuni Vimala, you're no microphone. Yeah.
And did you have a question? Did you want me to say something?
I just saw you move your mouth. I thought you wanted
Oh,
to
no, I didn't say anything. Sorry.
I just want to ask these questions.
Venerable Sobana, I think she have hands up.
Yeah.
Yes. Dear Venerables, I can give a statement of the Buddha about mental illness, which is even more concise than what has been mentioned so far. Sankitena panchupadana kanda dukkha. I've had this belief for a long time, like more than 10 years, that the 5 khandas associated with clinging and identification as self is a way of seeing mental illness. Not only a lot of secular approaches take one or another, or perhaps several of these kinds of factors, like the pills they prescribe would address the body. Cognitive therapy addresses perception. Therapy that emphasizes about morality addresses volition. But a balanced approach that tries to break up. It's like the 5 khandas. When a person is mentally ill, or even an ordinary person who's caught up in a suffering state, they're bound together, they're twisted together in a powerful knot, and so powerful you can't find a way to change it. You can't find a way to get out of that trap. But if through some analytical method or some way, if you can just break off some part of the 5 khandas and shift something, it opens the system, and one then can gradually learn to like reverse and have a more flexible, open, non-clinging, tolerant way of seeing the natural operation of how this body works in connection with its feelings, its volitions, its perceptions, and its consciousness. It's been the most helpful way to put ideas like Western ideas about mental health and mental therapy into a context that fits into the teachings of the Dhamma.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah. Guru Nagoda? Yeah?
Yes. Bhante Dhammaloka.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to participate with this wonderful program. Yes, I appreciate that Bhante Vijita and other monks mentioned about Venerable Punnaji's idea about Buddhism and modern psychotherapy. And I remember while he was alive, we were talking about it. And I know that his idea was like modern psychology is to bring abnormal mind to normal, while Buddhism is to bring normal person to supernormal state. Once when I met him at the New York Buddhist Vihara, I was telling him, like a joke actually, I told him, And no, Buddhism can bring even abnormal person to normal, and also from normal to supernormal state. Though I was like telling him like a joke to him, I thought later it's really how it is, because the Buddha has met a lot of cases of people who were really not normal, like Angulimala, Kisa Gotami, Patachara, and so many who were really not normal, abnormal state when they were meeting the Buddha. But tactically, the Buddha was able to bring their abnormal mental condition to normal state. He used certain methods and practical ways to make them from that normal to normal. Then from there on, the Buddha led them to supernormal state. For an example, very short, I would tell you that when Venerable Angulimala asked the Buddha to how he can help with a pregnant woman who is having a hard time to deliver the baby. The Buddha asked him to practice certain wish and to tell that since I was born, I have never killed any living being. And then he asked, how can it be? Consciously, I killed 999 human beings. Then he asked, did you do that even after becoming a monk? No, Venerable Sir. Then make a wish after becoming an Aryan or an enlightened person. I have never done that. And after becoming a monk, I have never done that. By the power of this truth, may she be well, happy. And in that way, I instructed him how to wish her for good health, healthy person. So in that way, the Buddha instructed that abnormal person to get rid of that suffering inner illness completely by keeping mind updated, like gone, past is gone, and I'm living right here, right now. So in that way, the Buddha instructed. So main thing is we have to learn Buddha's character and his Dhamma so that we can apply the Dhamma even to help with abnormal person to bring a normal level. And then we can help them to bring from normal to even supernormal state. So that's what I have to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Wonderful. Yeah. Anyone want to comment on that?
I think Yuttadhammo waiting.
Yeah. Niditala? Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yudhidhamma.
One day's back.
Yes. Yudhidhamma.
So yes, so I just wanted to one really important aspect of mental health as it relates to Buddhism, both theoretically and practically, in my mind, is the ability to separate the physical from the mental. In the Visuddhimagga, the first of the many stages of knowledge in the Panya chapter is something called Namarupa Parichedanyana, and it's where we begin in my tradition on a meditation course to teach the meditator. We have to check and address whether they can tell the difference between the physical and the mental, because the ordinary way of seeing things is from a conceptual level. We think of reality as being people, whether if it's fear or anger towards another being, we think in terms of being. If it's desire, it's lust towards another being, and so on. We also tend to mix the brain and the mind, and so we think of a mental health issue as being an issue of the brain chemicals and so on, and something that can be addressed through medication and so on. From a practical level, this takes on the issue or takes on the appearance of hopelessness in the meditator or the patient, call them what you will, where they think of themselves as having an issue, depression, anxiety, even addiction or anger issues, when in fact, of course, as we know in Buddhism, there is simply the five aggregates that arise and cease at the six senses. Basically, there's experiences. So for in issues, for example, of anxiety, where a person experiences anxiety from a thought or a concept, and then experiences the results of the anxiety in the body. They might feel tension, they might feel butterflies in the stomach, heart beating fast, headache, or so on. And that in turn makes them more anxious as they react to it, thinking, now I'm anxious. And they react to the physical, and it creates a feedback loop. And their perception of myself having anxiety makes them more anxious. Our perception of being angry can make us angry. Our perception of being depressed makes us depressed. Seeing it as an entity and not being able to discern, for example, that butterflies in your stomach is not anxiety. That's a physical manifestation or result. When a meditator is able to separate these things, you find incredibly swift, deep, and meaningful results, where the meditator is able to experience the physical without being anxious about it, even though it feels like they're shaking. In regards to desire, when you desire a person, you think of yourself as having an issue, an addiction issue, when in fact there are, of course, the aspects of the experience which are the physical seeing of something, the pleasurable feeling, and the desire as separate entities. And if you're not able to separate these things, if you're not working on a level of being able to separate what is physical, what is mental, or separate the five aggregates or the four foundations of mindfulness out, you're never going to be able to see what's really happening, and especially those aspects of reality that are going to allow you to let go, specifically the three characteristics. I mean, why is it that we give rise to the root causes of mental illness in the first place? Is because of not seeing the three characteristics, because we think of things as stable, and whether good or bad, we think of them as satisfying, either that they are something that's going to satisfy us, or they're not, and we have to fix it so that they are. And third, we see them as being self, being under our control. I can fix this. This is a problem for me to fix, for me to do something about. And so we're constantly trying to address, trying to adjust, trying to fix, trying to control, because we don't see the true characters. You'll never see them if you're dealing in terms of entities. So separating moments of physical and mental experience and being able to separate the physical from the mental it isn't just theory. This is what I deal with every day with meditators. It's absolutely the crucial first step for a meditator to begin to, or for a patient, let's say, to begin to overcome things like mental illness, followed by the second stage of knowledge and the third. And so, I mean, I could go on for hours about how far it goes and talking about how this makes a person exceptional. The beginning of mental health is the first stage of the 16 stages of knowledge, and it goes all the way to the 16th. It really is a detailed description of mental health that we find in the Buddhist teaching. So
you bring up a really, really, really good point. You know, this idea of believing that this illness is me, it is mine and myself. It's devastating, and that anatta is a key to the idea of this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. And helping a person that way in this teaching in Buddhism is the most remarkable way of setting a person freer from the devastation of believing it's my fault, I'm to blame, it's all mine, it's not happening to anyone but me. That's incredible. Yeah. Welcome back, Bhante.
Yeah, sorry, we are having problem with the internet connection. We completely lost the internet connection. And at the moment, we are just using the data. So I'm glad that this discussion is going on. Please, if I get stuck, please continue with this discussion. This is an amazing discussion. I missed all the important insights you have shared with us. But
your internet is not healthy, Bante.
But still, despite all this, I'm trying to keep myself calm, sane, not worried. I'm still smiling.
The internet is still physical. Keep your mental.
Yeah. So, so Bante Devaratana from Pittsburgh. Yesterday, when I was talking to you, you said something very interesting. And about mental health is all about, like when we look at Buddhist teachings about mental health, is the prevention. Bante Pevaratana.
Yes, Bante, I have been enjoying that, same point was emphasized by few of our monks, Bante, I think Bante Dhammaloka emphasized that fact, and even what Bante Yutta Dhamma was explaining now is actually, finding the root cause of all our, psychological, disorders, but even, what we call the normal level, normal level of normal level of health also not considered as a optimal health in Buddhism. So I really appreciate. I have been really enjoying their discussion. So yes, Bante, exactly. That is what these our venerable monks also have been emphasizing, and even our bhikkhuni Soban also emphasized the same fact. So when we look at the Buddhist teachings, Bante, just like Bante Dhammaloka mentioned, we find two mainly in mental health, we can find what you call curative treatment or curative care and preventive care. Right? So there are two ways to address this mental illness. Either we can help people to prevent from getting into illnesses, or once they have it, we can try to help them to get cured. So curative care and preventive care. So what we find in Buddhism, the emphasis is on preventive care. Means that whatever mental disorders that we experience is actually extreme forms of our defilements, our kilesas. So if you don't handle our kilesas, our different forms of kilesas, and then these defilements will eventually bring us to extreme form of mental illnesses. So the most of the Buddha's teaching is to recognize these kilesas and these defilements at early stage, and then observe them and recognize them, and then use our insightful wisdom, as Bhante Yutta Dhammo explained, and then try to prevent those, try to manage these defilements and eventually eradicate. So in that way, you will not even have a mental illness later. But so that is, many of our Bhantes explain that. But there is also some teaching that can be categorized as curative care. That as Bhante Dhammaloka mentioned, Buddha met so many people who can be considered in modern terms, psychologically ill or having psychological disorders. And in the Buddhist literature, we also find some curative measures also. And I would like to, share one story that we find in Dhammapadatta Katha, the commentary to Dhammapada, where we find a very interesting case where Buddha is kind of treating what we consider today important major psychological disorder, what we call eating disorder. So we know that eating disorder is a very common thing today. And I think many of our venerable Bhantes are familiar with the story of King Pasenadi, the well-known king. And he, and according to this story, he came to see the Buddha in an afternoon. And when he came to see the Buddha, he was very uncomfortable. He even cannot sit properly. He's having so much of discomfort and fatigue. And Buddha asked, why you feel so uncomfortable? And he said that every time when I finish my meal, this is how I feel. I'm not comfortable. I'm having so much of difficulty. And then Buddha asks, how do you eat and how much you eat? And according to the story, he's eating 16 buckets of meal, 16 buckets, or maybe, you can, maybe let's say 16 plates. He's eating that much. Of course, being a king, he has the luxury to, have any kind of meal he want to have. So he has it's a form of eating disorder. He's eating too much, overeating. So, and then after hearing his eating habits and eating too much, and Buddha explained him importance of ahare mattanyuta, like eating moderately, eating what your body really needs, and then. But not only Buddha actually gave him a teaching, but actually Buddha also gave him a treatment plan, so to speak. And so there was a grandson who came with the king, called Sudarsana, and Buddha appointed this grandson. I'm going to, so Buddha is going to help this king to get rid of his eating disorder. So Buddha appointed his grandson. So next time when the king is eating, and wait, he usually eats 16 plates, right? So wait until he finished 15. Once he finished 15, I will teach a stanza, a gatha. Please recite this gatha. And then then Buddha advised king that when your grandson recite this gatha, contemplate the meaning and try to avoid eating the last plate. You can eat 15, but avoid the last plate. The meaning of that stanza is like explaining the benefit of eating moderately, and also explaining the negative impacts of eating too much. And so even kind of ridiculing a person who's eating without any awareness of bodily needs to a pig. So it's kind of, so Buddha taught that stanza to that grandson. So the king accepted the Buddha's advice, and grandson also accepted. So next day, the king is having his meal, eating this much. And when he come to the 15 plates, when he finished the 15 plates, and the grandson uttered that stanza. And king was reminded of the Buddha's plan, and also contemplated the meaning and disadvantage of eating too much, and he stopped at the 15. And next day, Buddha advised the king Sudarsana to recite the same stanza at the end of 14 plate. So it's gradually reducing. So the next day, king was eating happily. When he finished the 14, the grandson uttered the same stanza. In this way, actually, according to the Buddha's advice, this grandson was reciting every day, like one less plate. So the king was able to gradually eat one less plate a day. And eventually he was able to actually come to a very low number and feel satisfied even with that amount of food. And as a result, he got slim, and he got very energetic, and he was so comfortable. And after a month or two, and he went back to the Buddha and thanked the Buddha for giving him such a comfort. So this is found in the Dhammapadatta Katha. I think that this will be the first recorded treatment for eating disorders. So Bhante, it is clear that of course the emphasis of Buddhism is to prevent any mental illnesses, and not only simple mental illnesses actually, and to eradicate all the defilements, which is the root cause of mental illnesses. But there are also important insights that we can get in the Buddhist literature for curative.
Do you remember the story of the man who ate uchara? Do you know that story?
Ekuttara? Yes.
Uchara. No, uchara. He ate only feces.
Okay.
You don't know the story? It's in the Jataka, I think.
Yeah, it's known.
Where is it?
That's Isn't that the one, isn't that the story where the Buddha was living at one time on the calves? The calves, it was at one of his lifetimes, or was it one of the
No, it wasn't the Bodhisattva.
radical practices he did early before?
No. It's a whole story about a man who was born because of bad karma in the past life. He was addicted to eating feces, and so he would stand on one leg by the latrines, the public latrines, and he would claim to eat only air. He was a beggar. I think they kicked him out because he ate uchara. No one would hang out with him because he ate only feces. And he would stand by the latrines with his mouth open. And people ask him, and he'd say, "Oh, I eat only air." And when they went and used the latrines and came back, he would go and he would eat. It's a terrible story, but it definitely a mental illness.
That is the name of
Who knows the story?
Jambuka Jivaka.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Jambukaji.
He was cured, right?
That is his name.
Eventually, he was cured by the Buddha, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so now, oh, I see Venerable Muniputtu from Seattle. You raised your hands. I'm positive you have a
Yeah.
story to tell or something, some insights.
Yeah, I check. Actually, I want to read from the book of What the Buddha Taught by Professor Vaipala Rahula. I think it's very interesting. He wrote chapter 3 on the mental culture, Bhavana. So he said something from the sutta you just mentioned earlier also. Okay, I'm gonna read just a few sentences. The Buddha said, "Oh, bhikkhus, there are two kinds of illness. What are the two? Physical illness and mental illness. There seem to be people who enjoy freedom from physical illness, even for a year or two, even for 100 years or more. But, oh, bhikkhus, rare in this world are those who enjoy freedom from mental illness, even for one moment, except for those who are free from mental defilements, that is, arahants." So here we can very clearly see that every Patujana, even some Ariya Pukala, except Arahant, they still have in association with the mental health. If we have not attained to the stage of Arahant, we all still, have the problem with mental illness, mental disease, through lobha, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion. We all still are bothering by these defilements of the mind. If we still have the mental defilement, for sure we all still have the mental illness. And then he went on with another sentence. The Buddha's teaching, particularly his way of meditation, aims at producing a state of perfect mental health, equilibrium, and tranquility. So this is very much in relation with what we have been talking about the mental health. The whole purpose of the Buddha's teaching aims at promoting mental health. That's why we always talk about Buddhism, strongly emphasize about training the mind, learning to, how we can train our mind. So there are so many methods for mental development as taught in the bhavana, the techniques of meditation and vipassana. So these are all the techniques, the way to promote mental health. And thank you very much. And I see the one question, Bhante. I don't know if we take the question or not. So I will just read it out from the audience. Okay, because he was asking that a few times already.
Yeah,
Paul,
is that Paul Bressy?
Yeah, Paul Bressy, Bhante.
Yeah, I will come back to that. And of course, I really want to ask that question from our venerable monks and nuns. Paul is asking a question: how does one deal with irrational fear? Irrational fear. Anyone?
We have.
Okay, sure, Mataji.
When we look at fear, this is where dependent origination comes in. We take the 7 links that are being used in this lifetime all the time, and we take a look at how exactly, if we teach someone how exactly fear comes up. Panic attacks are a really good example of fear. And when we explain to the student exactly with contact, with mental contact, and then feeling a painful feeling rising, and then not liking it, and then watching the mind fall into upadana and run away with mental proliferation very seriously, and then dive into the addiction habit. In Bhawa, there's a place where all of our habitual tendencies live, and grab that, because every time I feel like that, this is going to happen. And so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start to shake, and my body responds by sweating and getting very hot. And I'm going to have to leave and get away from all the people. You can soak through your clothes very quickly, and you have to run away. This is a terrible thing to go through, okay? And by explaining just how this is happening, how exactly it is happening, we can go to the Bhaya-Bharawa Sutta and look at what happened with fear and trepidation, and see what the Buddha said, the counter, take the counter to it. I will let that go, and it is not me, it is not mine, it is not myself, and teaching them to do this constantly, then they can overcome this. Less and less time involved, and they can overcome the panic attack. They don't need to take the drugs anymore for panic attack. They don't need the pill. They can do this through the mental process of learning precisely how did this happen, and then they can let it go. They can come up with something that is a response instead of a habitual reaction that lives where Bhawa, we say Bhawa, but instead of saying the old definitions, Usilananda, the late Usilananda agreed with my teacher, this is a good idea, that's where all of these reactions live, and teach them where it is, and they can watch and discover how it works, and they can change it. And the Bhaya-Bharawa was treating this hindrance, this imperfection of mind, this fear, as a habitual hindrance that was coming up for the person. And so we're going to solve it by going the other way. Forgive yourself. It's not me. It is not mine. It is not myself. I can let go, relax, breathe, go back into your breathing, relax. Like Yudhidhamma saying, use your practice, come back to the breathing, or come back to forgiving yourself, being compassionate, loving kindness to yourself in this situation. Let go and change. And change it and laugh at, look, that came up. I didn't ask it to. There's your atta anatta play out there. And all of these things are woven together. And we use the 7 links from contact to the birth of reaction. And we work with it, with the meditator or the person, and they begin to realize this depression is not mine. It is not mine. It is not mine. It is happening this way, from the point where you have a thought, and then it's very frightening to have the depressive feeling come up, same way. And you teach them, what if this depression is not you? It is not yours. What then? And I taught a woman once who was not a Buddhist, just these links, and showed her how it worked. And all of a sudden she figured out, as we drew it on a piece of paper very clearly, this is not my depression. And here she was on heavy drugs, about to break up with her husband, and he was going to leave with the child, and everything was collapsing, and her life turned around. Because you know what? This is not me. It's not mine. It's not myself. It's not my fault. That's a big step in mental health, a big step. And then what's the solution? I can go, what if I try the opposite way I normally react? And then you go from there with calming the person in the meditation and with using the Brahma Viharas to uplift them. But this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. This is just what the truth is right this second. I can change it. You can change it. Change your mind. Look at what happened to the panic attack. Change your mind. You change the whole body, because the mind and body is a connection in that way. I can lower my blood pressure at the doctor's office. He gets angry at me. And
That would be actually interesting. Like, I would like to, I would be interested in knowing this, that neuroscientific perspective. I think next time we need to invite a neuroscientist, how this happens actually. There's a way to deal with this fear, and there's a way to overcome it and remove this fear. And what you said is very interesting. If you don't personalize it, like if you give attention to it, it's going to grow. It's a way of feeding it, right?
This is precisely true. That's in the Samyutta Nikaya. There is a specific place, Bhikkhu Bodhi's version of this Samyutta Nikaya. It's on page 1597. You start reading a discussion where it is about the nourishment or the denourishment of a hindrance in direct relationship to the arising or the non-arising of the enlightenment factors. And those enlightenment factors, if you are pursuing a path to reach cessation, have to come up and get aligned very perfectly in order to fall into cessation and experience that. So everybody wants to have their enlightenment factors grow. And this discussion is saying that careless attention to any imperfection of the mind, that's going to cause, so the enlightenment factors won't grow. And then the Alagadupama Sutta is even more specific. The problem with the monk Arati in the Alagadupama Sutta was that he believed it was okay to engage the hindrance. And the Buddha came and the monks ran away and got the Buddha to come and straighten this out, because it was not what the Buddha was teaching. The Buddha was teaching the only way an obstacle can become an obstruction is if you personally engage it. So that meant that your attention was the food, the nutriment in the Samyutta Nikaya, but in the Alagadupama, he was very blunt about this. It was do not engage the hindrance.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you do, it becomes bigger and stronger and you can't continue.
Yeah.
How about observation? How about observation of fear?
If you go and sit with the fear, I guarantee it will get bigger and stronger and come back again and again and again. You have to experiment with this yourself. But if you let it go, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, this is just fear. If you let it go and replace it, then
before we let it go, don't we have to recognize it? Don't it have to be familiar with the mental state?
Yes, I think you have to look in the text to find that and show it to me, please. I've been looking for it many years because so many people think it's okay to go there, sit with it until it goes away. My argument as a meditation teacher was, okay, I asked you to sit for an hour and you tell me in that hour you could only stay with the object for 2 minutes before you were pulled away. What did you do? Well, I went and sat with this one. I needed to know what it was. Some people misunderstand what you say too, Bhante, because noting something didn't mean, noticing something is not the same as going and saying, well, what's your name? Where did you come from? Why are you here? And getting all involved. As soon as you do that in my meditation class, I have to point out to you, you started out doing breathing or you started out doing your Brahma Viharas, but in your practice this time, you were doing 2 meditations. One was your breathing, or else it was sending loving kindness to your spiritual friend. The second thing you started doing was you started analyzing a imperfection. So you have to go to the Upakkalesa Sutta and see what did the Buddha say was the answer to the problem of 11 or 12 imperfections there, or in the Bhaya what was the solution? To sit with the fear and then come up with something else? Or what? Because in the text, I can't find it. I keep looking for it because I'm thinking so many people are doing this, but why? And then the person who's really struggling from the hindrances, they can't get free. They think they have to go. And the problem here is, I think, I was an English teacher too. So I think if a person is trying to explain to us, and English is a second language, sometimes they don't realize note could mean a lot of different things to all those people in front of us that we're teaching. And we don't get feedback from them what they think you meant when you say note that came up. I mean, note that when it came up, you didn't make it happen and it's not yours. And you can just let it go. But the Buddhist solution was adamant when it came to hindrances. Abandon them, relinquish them, release them, let them go, allow them, and remember anicca. That was the whole message with about 15 or 11 to 15 suttas at this point in the research I'm doing for the hindrances, okay? We don't see any place in the text where it says you have to destroy it.
Vikuni, how about Satipatthana Sutta, when in the Dhammanupassana, when it comes to hindrances, and of course, the ultimately you let it go, but first you note it is there, right? And you note that when it is not there.
Can you please tell me where that comes from? Can you tell me where next time you can
Dhamma,
write me?
yeah,
I know Satipatthana, but I don't get
the common understanding, right? First, we need the recognition. Without recognition, we would not reach anywhere.
No, in
Dhammanupassana,
in Dhammanupassana, in the section of hindrances,
yeah.
Yes, in
No,
Satipatthana, Mahasatipatthana.
I think Bhante Pimaratana, I think Sister Kema, and I think this is very interesting topic. Now, I think what we are saying, my way of understanding this, I think we can, Bhante Pimaratana, I think we can apply the Four Noble Truths, that the strategy in everything, right? I think Sister Kema, as Buddha said in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, idang dukkhanti. First, we had to recognize the fact that this is the dukkha, this is the problem, right?
Yes.
And so, recognizing, seeing the problem as it is very important first. If you don't recognize it, then you can't find the root cause of this fear, right?
That's right.
Right?
That's
And then when you, like, I think there is a reason for Buddha to apply these Four Noble Truths, the technique, the strategy, and this is what modern doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists are using. With respect to any mental health issues, I think the very first thing is, recognizing the problem is very important.
But there's very many different degrees or angles of recognizing something. And if we're recognizing, where did it come from? Was it from an event when I was 6 years old? Do I have to go back and think about why is it here? Why is it bothering me? Or can I say that craving, identify craving specifically and say craving always manifests as tension and tightness when it is arising, and watch that in my body from the Vipassana aspect. As soon as I notice the arising of the tension, then let it go, relax, smile, and come back to what you're doing in your practice. If I, in other words, what did it mean to note it and identify it? I agree with you. You have to do that. That's right.
Okay. So now I think, thank you, Sister Kema. We have few hands raised. First by Bhante Vijita from Ottawa. Bhante Vijita, you have to unmute.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Venerable. And it's our discussion is going to a very interesting area. So I think Venerable came out and addressing the question came from the audience, irrational fear. So I'm not going to talk about that, and there are lots of things that we can talk about it, since it will take more time. So I would like to go back to our a discussion, which is mental health and Buddhism. As Bhante Pemaratana mentioned, prevention is one thing that Buddhism talk about. When we look at eight worldly conditions, for example. So no matter whether we are, a monastic, non-monastic, so we all going to experience these losses, gain, sicknesses, pain, and all these conditions in life. So the more we become closer to the teachings of the Buddha, we develop right understanding, awareness, to face those incidents in life with much awareness. And without personalizing those experiences, we will be able to see them as they arise, and then we can respond to them in healthy ways. So I think that's a very good distinguish in the teachings of the Buddha. Like we are preparing our mind to face anything that takes place in life with equanimous mind, with upekkha. If we talk about, post-traumatic stress, so for a Buddhist practitioner, we are training our mind even to, face those traumatic incidents, and without allowing us to end up going to post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So that's, I think it's very interesting when we talk about Buddhism and mental health. Like we encourage, or the Buddhist teachings encourages us, be prepared, be ready. These things will come up, even the death, around death, lots of fear, anxiety, grief, and all these mental conditions arise. But reflecting on death in others' lives as well, prepare us to face those. So in that way, we increase the quality of life, and we prepare our mind to, embrace those things without letting them to control us. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. Bante Sunita from Ottawa, you also raised your hand. Please share. You have to unmute yourself, Bante Sunita.
Thank you, Venerable Samapala, and all the other Venerable monks and nuns. Actually, I like to give my idea about what the Bhaibheva Sutta said and explained. I have a real first-hand experience. When I was young, even after being a monk, I was very, very fear of dark and everything, ghosts and whatever, and even people. Until I start learning, and at the last months of for my A level back in Sri Lanka, I was very fear of darkness and everything. I even didn't go to a toilet alone when I was at home when I was young. So I want to say how I gave up that negative habitual patterns. Me, one day I had to came to temple after my class. It was late evening, so I couldn't even think about how I reach the temple. So I have to walk for almost 2 kilometers from to the temple. I had to walk through the very near on a path very near to a cemetery. Can you even think about how such a young monk go and travel through the path where very close to a cemetery? So what I did was I used to go on that path, but not in the darkness. So they on the day where I had to go, I ran and I stopped and say Itipiso Bhagavarahan Samma Sambuddha, and again and again and again, but I couldn't do anything. Still fear is rise in me, and everywhere I feel that, now still I have that feeling. But I thought not to run. I thought to stop. I thought right at the in front of the cemetery, I stop and I just observe. Nothing else I did. I just observe what is there. Actually, I saw the banana leaves shaking there, and white plastic pieces are shaking there. Then I realized, oh, this is not something that I have to be fear, right? So then I got released. I was released from that fear. From that day, until now, I'm free from that fear. So observing is the very, very important thing, as Bhante Pemaratana said. That is the moment. So when we observe our thoughts and feeling, whatever arising, then only we can understand, okay, this is the root, this is the cause. Then I have ability to remove that. When we unveil things, then we can see the thing really as they are. So that is what I want to say. Actually, that is my first-hand experience. If we don't know where I am on my map, we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do. So first, understand where you are now, right now. That means observe. Observe, be mindful right here. Then only you can choose the path, right? And Mataji Kema said that, yes, of course, if we focus on something, it becomes bigger and bigger, like magnifier. The way we look at that is the matter. If we look at something with the negative mind, then that problem can become bigger and bigger. If we have a positive aspect, so then we can reduce it.
See it clearly, where it is, objectively.
Objectively, yes, of course. So focus first, stop, and observe, and take a pause. Observe what is happening right now here. Then only you can choose the way.
I said that's a great story, Bhante Sunita. Thank you for sharing that story. It reminds me of, I think this would be so great for all of us, all the venerable monks and nuns who are here, to read the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 4, the Bhaya Bhairava Sutta, how Buddha himself practiced this and how he removed the fear that is in his mind and heart, and what caused the fear to arise, and how the technique he used. And I think maybe in coming, of course, this is not the first and last discussion about Buddhism mental health. And as I said, this is a broad topic, and we can expand hours and hours. But here, Venerable Sobana Theri, you raised your hand. We don't have much time. We have just 2 more minutes. And
thank you, sir. Just briefly, I agree that nowhere are we saying that to psychoanalyze ourselves or go into speculation about what might have been in the past that's causing our present mental problems to happen. But the Vitakka Santana Sutta has a graded set of different approaches. So if the simple mindfulness is not strong enough to pull out of a negative formation, it gives other ways of doing it, which are a bit more gradual. And the other sutta reference I'd suggest to look into is several places where it talks about the gratification, the danger, and the escape. For example, in chapter 22 of Sutta of the Samyutta, so that in a way, I always find it helpful when my mind it goes to a bad place, first I forgive that whatever it is in me, which is trying to be well by going into fear, anger, or something else. I say, you know, I understand you're trying to help, but this is really not help. That I see the danger, and then release it. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we finish, and I think we have
Bante Kusala is raising his hand for a while.
Yes, Bante, this is just one last thought that I like to share. Sometimes, I read that, lack of education lead to mental illness, but that is not true. There are so many people who are educated, who are going through different mental issues. So this one thing that really struck in my mind is that people think that they live in bungalows, they live in flats, they live in mansions, but in reality, we live in our minds, which is an unlimited area. So this is where all these things start and end. So with that, maybe we can conclude if Bante is willing to, and then maybe we need to have another discussion so that we can explore more things. And I have more to add, but I think because of the time, I'm going to stop here.
Okay, I think that's very interesting. I think we are going to have more discussions on this topic. And here, actually, we received some great feedbacks. Graciana Ledida is saying, Chris Nebo wrote a book called No Self, No Problem. Explained this concept well of how a self is a program run by the brain. He brings together neuroscience and Buddhist wisdom, definitely aligned with what is being said and taught here today. I think this is very interesting. And we have Bante Varapanyo joining us. Bante Varapanyo, I can give few seconds. Can you unmute yourself and introduce? Do you have anything to say?
Oh, hello, Venerables, Senior Venerables. Very happy to be here joining. It's a special activity, and I think so much benefit I have found by being here today. And I look forward to further discussions and participating more in these the Sangha activities.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And Bante Kondanya from New York, and are you here? Bante Kondanya? I think, okay, maybe I was planning to end this discussion today by reciting the over the Patimokkha by him, but maybe he's not by the computer. So I would like to invite Bante Sunita. Bante Sunita, actually a lot of friends on the Facebook saying they have expressed their gratitude for telling a story, and that actually related to them, and it was a great strategy. I think there are a few people who said, thank you, Bante Sunita, for sharing your story. And there's also, they say, please do part 2. It's a very interesting topic. We will. Madam Rani, thank you. So, Bante Sunita, please recite the Ova the Patimokkha to finish today's discussion.
Well, Bante Sarnapala and all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis for the moment. And before recite the Ova the Patimokkha, I wish you all and all the participants and all viewers who join us now and who views this later, and all the human being and all living being in this whole entire universe be well, happy and peaceful, and may all you be well, happy, peaceful and relaxed, and may you be free from all kind of mental, physical suffering, problems, issues and difficulties. Sabba papassa akaranam kusalansa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanam etang buddhana sasanam. Khanti paramang taputitikha Nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha Nahi pabbajito parupaghati Samano hoti parang vihetayantu Anupavadu anupaghatu Pati mukhe cha sangvaru Matang yuta cha battasmin Pangtang cha sayanasanam Adhicitte cha ayugo Itang buddhana sasanam
Sadhu,
Sadhu.
sadhu, sadhu. It was beautifully chanted, Bhante Sunita. I felt like I have gone back to the Buddha's time. So thank you, Venerable Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis, for joining today's bi-weekly Sutta discussion on Buddhism and mental health. Definitely, our next discussion is also going to be on this topic, but with more questions. And we would like to ask and invite all our audience on Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us. You can send your questions to Zoom Sutra Discussion at gmail.com. Until next time, may you all have the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for your health, happiness, and peace. May all sentient beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitartha. Bye-bye.